and her husband and her family. But I didn't know this. So I'm giving my talk about growing up on the Mississippi Delta and the people that I knew and cared about. And at the end of my talk, this very nice lady came up. I remember exactly what Sandra Day O'Connor was wearing. She had on a yellow windbreaker and a pair of white slacks. And she came up to me and she said, Mr. Taulbert, your words are so meaningful. We have to bring you to Washington. We need to hear those words there. And I said, well, thank you. And she walked away, but the guy behind me said, do you know to whom you were speaking? I said, not really. I don't know anyone here except one person. And he said, that's the Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. And I said, you're kidding me. That's impossible. He said, no, it's not impossible. That was Sandra Day O'Connor. And suffice it to say, when I did go to Washington and she introduced me as a friend, these are the words she used. We don't accomplish anything in this world alone. And whatever happens is the result of the whole tapestry of one's life and all the weavings of individual threads from one to another that creates something. Community depends upon all of us to become part of the weavers, weaving these individual threads from one to another. That unselfish act, those unselfish acts create the something that really, truly matters. So at the 27th annual NAACP Image Award, I was given an opportunity to be thanked for the book I had written, Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored. And it was, I guess when I wrote it, I thought it would simply be a book for my family, maybe a few friends. But in 1989, the book came out. It became an international bestseller, had been reprinted so many times, and is in bookstores all over the world. But that night in California, outside of Los Angeles, when the NAACP had their meeting, I was introduced by Denzel Washington and Whitney Houston. And I was so nervous when they called my name to come up. I sat there, I'm sure you've never been that nervous, but I have. And my son, who was the teenager, just punched me in the side. Dad, get up. They just called you. And I walked up to the stage, and on my way walking there, I had no speech prepared because I had no idea that I was going to get this honor. I was trying to think, what am I going to say? And then as I stepped to the stage, I remembered the people who really should have been there, they couldn't come. So I said to the audience of well-dressed men and women, wonderful actresses and actors from around our country and the world, I said, they couldn't come tonight because they were still driving tractors, still cutting grass, still working the fields. They were ordinary people going about their lives, and they didn't have the right clothes to wear. But they sent me. And ever since I said that, I have remembered that my life made a choice to be the ambassador for those people who literally built community for me. So it was 24 years later, in 1989, I had written that book, started writing it when I was a young boy and young man in the military. But I carried that manuscript around for 24 years before it became a book. It became a book in 1989. And I will always remember that. And I will always remember the night that I had the opportunity to thank the people for whom the book was written. They were the community that changed my life. 8 Habits of the Heart is another one of the books that I've written about these incredible people. And talking about an engaged community where what we're passing along are the strengths of our lives. And oftentimes we forget that we have strength, but everyone does. And we have to realize that we're not here on the planet just to have another cup of coffee. We're here to really pass some things along, the strengths of our lives, which are made clear through daily living. Not a prominent day or a day of great celebratory action, but every single day we can pass along the strengths of our lives. I've met John Wooden, knew him before he passed away. We both lectured at the Air Force Academy. but I had not given him a copy of 8 Habits of the Heart, but he had gotten a copy, and he wrote a letter to one of his Fortune 500 company presidents who may have been one of his basketball players in his early age. And I was called and said, "We have a letter from John Wooden, but it's about your book. I think you'd like to read it." And I remember the words that he said. I couldn't put it down until I had read the last page. The book really wasn't about me. It was about those ordinary people who touched my life. And there are so many of them. And many of them don't know just how important they are. And that's why I talk about community whenever I get the chance, because I want everyday people to understand that they can be transformative in the lives of others. So ordinary people became extraordinary leaders, and I want you to meet them now. I want you to meet the people and their gifts to me. We need time from others. We need that. And oftentimes we don't get it, but I was very fortunate. I needed time and I got time. But, but nurturing attitude is the habit that they displayed. And a nurturing attitude is the first habit of the heart. And it is characterized by unselfish caring, supportiveness, and a willingness to share time. But more importantly, nurturing attitude will always be a person or a group of people. These are my great-grandparents, Joe and Pearl Young, incredible people. And I can remember as a boy, young boy that is, sitting on my grandpa's front steps with my knees pulled up to my chin, looking as far as I could. And all I could see were cotton fields. I'd seen them every single day of my life. But something magical would happen. My grandpa would come out of his house, open the screen door and say, "Clifton, do you want to go to Greenville?" Now, Greenville, Mississippi was called the Queen City of the Delta. And according to Mr. Calloway, one of the writers for the Chicago Tribune, who did a story on me, he said, for young Cliff Taulbert, Paul Galloway said, for young Cliff Taulbert to go to Greenville, 27 miles away, was tantamount to taking the Concorde to Paris, France. But that's what my grandpa did for me. He gave me something else to see. He provided me a different view, and different views are still needed today. And additionally, time is a gift to be unselfishly shared. A time when the needs of others rise to the top of your list because their potential and their dreams matter to you. But most often we say, I would do this, but I don't have the time. But let me tell you a secret. You will never have 2810. You will only have 24/7. And we can find ways to share that 24/7 with others. That's what my great-grandparents did. They were field workers. They worked hard, but I mattered to them, and it made all the difference in the world. That's why community is so transformative, because it is unselfishness in action. And I remember, because of them, this is a picture of the Assembly Hall of the United Nations. When I was invited there to speak several years ago, I said to myself, if only my grandpa and grandma could see me now. I didn't even know there was a United Nations when I was a kid. I had no idea. And to be there as a guest speaker to men and women from around the world, it was something that was beyond my imagination. But I think that my grandpa and my great-grandmother, Mama Pearl, I think that they had a vision for me that was bigger than the vision I had for myself. And that's what I try to encourage adults. Have a vision for the young people that surround your life, a vision that is bigger than them and yourself. We need knowledge of others as well. Everybody needs a little bit more information. We need knowledge, because it is knowledge that allows us to grow and become and to end up doing things that we never thought we could. But again, what is knowledge? It's about, I would say, becoming responsible, understanding responsibility. And responsibility is showing and encouraging a personal commitment to each task. And in that showing and encouragement, there's what I call the passing of knowledge from one to another. Because one does not become responsible just because you shake a hand or have a Coke together. Responsibility evolves out of literally unselfish acts. It evolves out of people realizing responsibility and the time that they can share with others and what can happen as a result of that. And as always, responsibility is a person. So that's why it's you, wherever you are right now in the Chicago area. I want you to know that responsibility is not the guy down the street. Responsibility is the person that I'm talking to right now. You are responsibility. This is my great uncle Cleve. He owned the ice house in Glen Allen, Mississippi. And he taught me how to work. He taught me how to think about a future that seemed impossible. But his life was also living a dream that was somewhat impossible. My world was completely segregated when I was a kid. But my great uncle had the only ice house in a segregated town. If you've ever lived south in the Mississippi Delta, it gets hot and the humidity falls like rain. You gotta have ice. There was only one ice house, and it was owned by a Black man that I worked for, my great uncle Cleve. He taught me everything he knew, and it is my goal to pass it on. So shared knowledge matters today, but shared knowledge does not walk out of your head unless you have prepared it to do so. Now, what am I really saying? As a result of his personal involvement, and those are the key words, personal involvement, because oftentimes we're looking for someone else, but the someone we're looking for most often is us. As a result of his personal involvement and his sharing of knowledge, I was soon able to see myself differently. What? Clifton, you have the ability to live beyond the cotton fields of the Delta. You have the ability to do things, to get an education, to travel the world. Even though many of these things did not fall in his way or for him, yet this is what he dreamed for me. And this is what other adults can dream for the children, not just their nephews, but in cousins or brothers and sisters, but all the children of the world, they are ours. They are indeed our kin. And we also need vision of others as well. Because I have two eyes. I have 20/20 vision, I think. My wife tells me that I can't see as well as I used to. I don't believe it. I have 20/20 vision. But I do realize that vision beyond my eyes, the vision of the heart, the vision of expectation, that vision truly, truly matters. So become dependability because that houses that vision. Dependability is being there for others through all the times of their lives, a steady influence that makes tomorrow a welcome event. And I know that many of us have seen dependability in that little magic sticker that you put on the refrigerator door. I'm not talking about that word. I'm talking about the person who says, I am this habit of the heart. This is my great aunt, Mama Plum. After my great grandparents passed away, I went to live with her. And she promised me that I would have an education. She said, even if you don't have food to eat, you will go to school. So for 4 years in high school to high school, I traveled 100 miles round trip every single day. I never missed a day out of school because this lady, my great aunt, would get up every morning before I would, stand on the front porch in a flannel gown and a scarf tied tightly around her head. And she would pull the string on a 60-watt bulb, flashing light to the bus driver to stop at her house. He never missed a day, and my great aunt never missed a day. And for 4 years, I never missed one day out of school. Perfect attendance for 4 years because this lady understood dependability. Dependability will always be a person. And that is now what is demanded of me. I must become that person. My future mattered to her. And the future of every child should matter to the adult. We should get great excited thinking about how we can touch tomorrow by touching children today. I remember one day I asked my great aunt if I could stay home because we didn't have lunch money. And I was in high school And all of my friends had money and cars. I had nothing like that at all. And so I said, just let me stay at home today till we maybe get something tomorrow. And she looked at me and she shook her little bony fingers in my face. And she said, nobody starves in a day. Get on that bus. And I've been on the bus ever since. From high school to college to graduate school and beyond, I've been on the bus because she said, nobody starves in a day. But impact the future of others. This is what this habit is asking us to do. It's not enough to observe what is needed, to be able to articulate what is missing. Dependability requires unselfish action. And unselfish action does not come from the hard assets of our lives. Unselfish action can only come from another human being. We need the heart shake of others. Now, I know we understand handshake. It can be very quick and move and you go on. But the heart shake, that's different. The heart shake is something that lasts a lifetime and is designed to make the lives of others better. So let's look at friendship. Let's think about it. Deeply think about friendship. Friendship is the habit that binds people together when they take pleasure in each other's company. You're there because you want to be there. You're eating slices of cake together because that's what you want to do. You're having a glass of water and talking about the run you're getting ready to make because that's what you want to do. You've had a bad day, you have someone who will listen at you. You need that. Take pleasure in each other's company. Listen, laugh, share good times and bad. That is what this habit does. It gives us the opportunity to maximize our potential. This is a picture of a blind person that is representative of blind Berta who lived in my community. Well, she really didn't live in Glen Allen, Mississippi, but she came to Glen Allen every single year. Once a year, she made a pilgrimage to Glen Allen, Mississippi. She would ride the bus. I have no idea where she lived or from where she came, but all the young people in our little community knew that Miss Berta, they call her, the kids call her Miss Berta, and the older people call her Blind Berta, is in town. And it wasn't a burden. It wasn't a problem. Because if a blind person comes, a person without sight, you have to help them. You have to give up your way and sort of get into their world so that you both can enjoy life together. So you have to kind of lay your own desires on the sidewalk for a while. So when Blind Berta came to town, everybody wanted to cook something for her. And they would all meet at Miss Ballard's house. On the front porch of Miss Ballard's house, all the women and some of the men of the town were there just to listen to Blind Berta talk and watch her eat her food as everybody was having food as well. And kids were having food, but if no food would have been had had it not been for Blind Berta coming to town, because that's where the heart shake would take place. The laughter, the joy of the people around her became her vision. A welcoming place for others is what we're talking about. Welcome places are still needed today. And a welcome place is not a welcome place if people aren't there to give it life. That's what the 8 habits of the heart. As the challenges of life grow more complex, friendship must be there in our classrooms, in our homes, on the playing fields, and our offices where we work. That makes community real. It becomes more than a word. It becomes this great woven basket that holds the habits of the heart. When you slice a piece of community, you should come out with a slice of friendship, a slice of nurturing attitude, a slice of brotherhood, a slice of responsibility. You should come out with those things. Those are the inside elements of good community. Beyond the Mississippi Delta, I remember after I had begun writing and traveling, having an opportunity to travel, One of the places I will never forget was outside of Frankfurt, Germany, in the Black Forest of Germany. There I would give a lecture in the hunting lodge that had been built for Adolf Hitler. It's conceivable that when I walked into the lodge, to all the educators who were there from around the world, to hear me talk about the 8 habits of the heart, I could have stood exactly where the Fuhrer himself had stood. And here I am, an African American from the Mississippi Delta, talking about community in the hunting lodge of Adolf Hitler. I came from a family of migrant field workers. The die had been cast. All of my family before me had worked the fields of the South, and I was doing likewise. But someone had an idea that my life could be, should be different, and they would do everything they could to make it happen. That's why community is so important for me. We need the welcome of others as well. You know, it's kind of like, there's a song that really captures it. One is a lonely number. It is a lonely number. We were made for community. We were designed for community. We were not designed to be alone. We were designed to be in the life and legacy of others. So we need the welcome of others in order to get the full joy of our own living. So brotherhood, sisterhood, this is the habit that reaches beyond comfortable relationships to extend a welcome to those who may be different from ourselves. Because everybody has a place called Cheers, where everybody knows our name. But everyone does not have a seat at Cheers. Cheers was a television series that ended. The restaurant no longer exists, and the people have gone their way. But brotherhood and sisterhood, to become this habit of the heart, is to become this lady. This was the lady that I worked for early on in my teenage years, Mrs. Knights. She had a fig orchard in Glen Allen, and my job was to rake fig leaves. And I remember the first day that I went to her home, came to her home to rake the leaves. And I remember distinctively how she came out of her sewing shop and explained to me that she wanted her yard to look like carpet. And she brought me the rakes, the gunny sacks, and everything that I would need. Then she went back into the sewing shop that she owned because she sewed for the entire community. But around 11:30 or so, she came out of her shop. And she said, Clifton, come on, let us go and eat lunch. And I didn't know what to do because I was Black. I was old enough to know that I was not white and that I had never eaten in a white person's home before ever. And here it is, this lady inviting me into her home to have lunch. She's my boss. And I went to follow her, but I realized I couldn't follow her because my role was to go into her home, but to go in through the kitchen door. Blacks could not go in the front door of a white person's home. And she saw me making that turn to go to her kitchen. She said, no, 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 come on, follow me. And so I followed her through her living room. I followed her through her former dining room to the kitchen, where the table was already set for two. And there we would sit, and I would sort of patiently and a little uneasy, I would say, but we had baked chicken, lima beans, light bread, and sweet milk. That was the meal. And I was eating, and finally in the course of the conversation, she said, are you reading good books? She never asked me if I was raking up the yard clean. She said, are you reading good books? And I said, well, Ms. Knights, I can't go to the library. And all of a sudden she realized that not only was I a human being as she was, not only was I a young boy who should be reading books, but I had a color that would keep me from enjoying Glen Allen Public Library. The door was closed in my face. and no one said anything. We finished our meal. I went back to raking fig leaves. She went back to her shop. But the next week when I came to work, sitting by my plate of food was a stack of books from the Glen Allen Public Library that she had checked out for me. Not one time, but throughout high school. Sometimes we need the welcome of others in order to fully understand our shared and common humanity. Stretch tables are still needed. The world has changed, and all of its residents are becoming our neighbors. And we are challenged to stretch our tables to include others. You must lead the way in creating living environments where all are respected, affirmed, and included. I firmly believe that these are the three things that every human being needs from another. Please respect me, affirm me, include me. Clifton, what are you going to do? I'm going to respect you, I'm going to affirm you, I'm going to include you. That's what a good life is all about. And that is what an engaged community can accomplish when the opportunity is there to do so. We need the confidence of others. Isn't that amazing? Sometimes we're afraid to do things. It's probably not you, but I've been afraid to do a lot of things. But what happens though when someone tells you that you can? You ought to, you should. Become high expectations. We've heard the two words before. But becoming high expectations is a much broader concept. High expectations involve believing that others can be successful, not just holding it as a secret, but telling them so. And then when they do well, loudly and with others, praise their accomplishments. That's high expectations. That builds confidence in people when you tell them and clap for them. I love what you've done. It's absolutely amazing. Well, this is a shotgun house in the Mississippi Delta. It's not an archival picture. It's the home where a man we all knew lived that was called the Old African. He was unmarried. He worked around the homes of the mansions of the South, cutting grass, trimming trees, but he also collected books that they would throw away. And in his shotgun house, surrounding his bed were boxes and boxes of castaway books that he had gathered. And on Saturdays, not every Saturday, but many Saturdays, he would come into Glen Allen, walk there, maybe some 12 miles or so. But because of the social restraints of the day, he couldn't get water uptown. So he had to keep walking until he got to the colored community. And that's where we'd be in the front yard, playing marbles. My grandpa would be sitting in the rocking chair, just having a joyful day. And all of a sudden, the Old African, as we called him, would show up. And he would say in his stuttering voice, hey, yo, I need some water, man. And my grandpa would go and get him a dipper filled with water and crushed ice. And he would gulp it down rather quickly. But then the magic would start. He would go into his satchel and he would pull out a book. And he would sit on the steps with us, the kids that were now watching him and listening. Because my great-grandfather said, put the marbles away. You got to listen to the brother here. And he would talk to us in his stuttering voices. And he brought alive the words of Emily Dickinson, who said, there is no frigate like a book. There is no ship like a book. There is no car like a book to take you to places you've never been and to people you can barely imagine. This is what he did. High expectation. And before leaving, he would lay his hands on every child and tell them, you are marked for good. I don't know if my life would have stayed the same or changed had he not, but I'd rather think that hearing his voice in my ear growing up became part of who I would become. He would give me the confidence I would need to not only do well in school, but to enjoy school and to look toward the future of what my life could accomplish and who I could become. Building confidence in others is an incredible part of an engaged community. For some among us, educational institutions are the first places where they are exposed to this incredible world of self-discovery, self-reliance, and personal independence. Even so, we as community are uniquely positioned to welcome others to a world of possibilities yet to be discovered. We need the moral strength of others. Yeah, we need the moral strength of others. The way life, I've seen it for the years that I have lived, not any one person has everything that is needed, but they have a piece of the puzzle. But together we create this incredible picture. But unless we are together, we don't fully know who we really are. But we need the moral strength of others. Courage is standing up, first of all, and doing the right thing. That's required of me, Clifton, to stand up, do what is right, to speak out on the behalf of others. Let my voice be used for the voice of others. And it's about making a commitment to excellence in the face of adversity, even when there is no one supporting you. You do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. These are two men that have never met each other. I have only met one, and that is the gentleman at the top, a guy named Jake Ayers, a Black gentleman from Glen Allen, Mississippi, who gave his life to higher education for Blacks, to make sure that the funding from the state of Mississippi would equally fund the Black schools, the Black colleges, and white colleges. The Ku Klux Klan would pull him out of his car on Highway number 1 and beat him in the front of his children, but he never quit. He never gave up. And before Jake Ayers died, there was a case before the Supreme Court, Ayers versus Fordyce. He was dead, but the case was won. Mississippi now funds schools closer to equal than ever before, because this man became courage. He stood up, he spoke out for others, and even when he did not have the support of others, he continued the job. Well, so it is for Reverend Grisham, the great uncle of the writer John Grisham. Reverend Grisham was the pastor of the United Methodist Church on the campus of Ole Miss during the days of integration. James Meredith was the first person to integrate Ole Miss. My sister was in the second group of students to integrate that university. And this man would open up his church so that the Black student would have a place to hide, to be safe from trouble and danger, etc. While I was in the military, serving our country, my sister was in jail in Oxford, Mississippi. But there were the people there that got her out. And she graduated from there, became a CPA, an incredible young lady who's no longer with us, but a young lady that I will always love and always remember. The person who made the difference in the lives of so many other people. These two men confirmed their values by what they did and how they did it. Values still matter. Courage is not an abstraction. Courage has 2 feet, 2 hands, a mouth, a nose. Courage eat ice cream. Courage can walk to the beach. Courage can clap your hands. Courage can sing a song. Because courage is not an abstraction, courage is a person. It has always been a person. Courage rewards not only those who practice it, but those who witness it as well. Your show of courage reminds others that courage is still a worthy quality to possess. Courage. Values still matter. Become courage. There is no courage apart from us. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. We can't download courage. We can't plant courage and harvest it and put it in a mason jar and screw the top really clean and get a spoonful, a tablespoonful when we need it. It doesn't work that way. You can't order it over the internet. You can't. We are the courage we're looking for. Courage will always be us. We are the courage. And courage, it has no respect of person, race, or gender. Courage just seeks good hearts in which to dwell. We need the steadfastness of others. I'm talking about people who don't give up. They're doing something good for others. They may be tired, but they don't let their tiredness overcome them. They just don't give up. So become hope. Hope is believing in tomorrow, going beyond what we see, because we have learned to see with our hearts. That's what my family and friends in the Mississippi Delta did. They believed in a tomorrow for their children. They went beyond what they could see because they had learned to see with their hearts. They saw my future when I couldn't see my future myself. So when I received the NAACP Image Award for the book Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored, and had to think of what I would say after that wonderful introduction by Denzel Washington and Whitney Houston, I could not help but say, they couldn't come, but I am here because of them. They're the people who believe in tomorrow. This is my birth mother, Mary, an incredible lady of hope. My mom was a maid most of her life. She had 4 girls and 2 boys. She was divorced and had to raise the kids by herself. Everyone went to school, graduated either valedictorian or salutatorian of their classes, on to college and graduate school. And when everyone was in college, my mother's life would change. She had been a maid most of her life. She was asked to go, she had gone to college for 1 year. That was almost like 30 or 40 years ago. So they said, please go back to school because we're bringing Head Start to the Mississippi Delta and we want you to be part of it. But you can't until you get recertified in the program, which meant you have to go to college, back to college for that training. My mother finally said yes to Jake Ayers, the same Jake Ayers that we talked about when I identified courage, and to Mrs. Ann Britton, who was the Jean supervisor for Black teachers in the Mississippi Delta. I think in order to get them off of her back, my mother said, I'll go. She didn't have the clothes to wear, so she wrote a friend in Chicago, in your Chicago, Miss Gertrude Hall, who lived in Chicago, sent my mother the clothes that she would wear at the school, the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa. My mother hitchhiked part of the way. She became an A student at the university and one of the early founders of Head Start in the Mississippi Delta. She became such an incredible educator that Rose Kennedy, Sergeant Shriver, and Robert Kennedy came to the Mississippi Delta to see this lady that everyone called Miss Mary. My mother would walk the back fields of the Delta, going to the shotgun houses of the parents, saying to them, you got to let your children come to Head Start. And many of the people didn't want Head Start because Head Start would interrupt the traditions of the South. And traditions of the South was raise the children to work the field. And my mother said, you can't do that. Not one more generation can we have that happen. She put her life on the line to do what she had to do, but she did. She was an incredible educator, an incredible woman. And I only learned this 3 years ago when I was lecturing in New York. The chancellor of the university came to me and said, Mr. Taulbert, I met someone, I didn't meet them, but I know of them. Her name is Mary Morgan Taulbert. Do you know this person? I said, well, that's my mother. And she said, well, I want you to know that all of her work with Head Start has been archived at New York University. And we can't get our degree in social work until we have read all your mother's words and write a paper on the lady who taught us how much you can do with how little you have. Hope holds on to dreams, and it gives dreams to others. Hope is a person. For me, Hope was my mother, Mary. We can all be futurists, just as Mary decades ago stood at the front door, welcomed the Head Start students of the Mississippi Delta with a future of possibilities. In community, we can do like this. 8 habits of the heart. These 8 habits are not held captive by race, gender, or geography. They are timeless and universal. 8 Habits of the Heart for Educators made its debut at Harvard University, where I lectured for 5 summers. The principles that had come to the Principal Center from around the world. I didn't know what would happen to this book. I thought it would work, but I can honestly say that 8 Habits of the Heart has touched the lives of educators literally not only in our country, but around the world. How do you build these habits in the schools where you are? In our community, their lives are our books. In your community, their lives, the books you read to climb higher and to achieve more. The people are the books as well. We read people every single day of our lives. And in your community, their lives become the books you read to climb higher and to achieve more. Throughout the world, front porches still exist, and front porch people are still needed to ensure engaged communities. And as I close, I'd like to say during Black History Month, not only do we celebrate the lives and legacy of African Americans, but all people, all of humankind. We remember the goodness of their hearts, the gratefulness of their souls, and what their lives have meant to all of us. Yes, we celebrate Carter G. Woodson, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the founder of Black History Month, started in 1926, Black History Week. We celebrate his works. We celebrate the heart of Cesar Chavez and the work that he did to change the lives of the migrant workers. We celebrate Hardin Carter, the journalist from the Mississippi Delta, who published my first works. We celebrate Eleanor Roosevelt, who did so many things in life to show that the equality and the equity among humankind. We celebrate Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune, the great educator, the one who visited the White House, the lady whose heart was always headed toward doing something for others. And we celebrate the great Native American chief, Wilma Mankeller, chief of the Cherokee Nation, the first female chief of the Cherokee Nation. I had a chance to work with her, to write with her, and to be on stage with her. Many of these people I have known, most of them I don't know. But just because we don't know them, that does not mean we do not celebrate them. Because the tapestry of our lives, we are weavers all, those we know and those unknown. That is the end of my talk with you. It has been my pleasure being at your library, giving a conversation about good community.
Thank you so much, sir. That was really enlightening and inspiring. And I think I speak for everyone. We are filled with hope. And community is so important. We value community, and we really were inspired by your words. Do we have time for some questions? And do we have some questions from the audience? Okay, let's see if we have any questions. When did you first have an inkling that you were going to be successful? What was your first achievement where you said, I might be onto something, I'm going places?
You know, that's a good question, one which I've never been asked, but Something happened while I was in the military. I was working stationed at Dow Air Force Base in Bangor, Maine. And all of a sudden there was a notice from the Department of Defense of an opening in Washington, D.C. at the 89th Presidential Wing. And with that being said, I applied for that just out of sheer application. They said over 1,000 people applied for that. And I received the top secret clearance and was the person chosen. My last 2 years in the military was spent at Andrews Air Force Base at the 89th Presidential Wing. And that's when I began to realize that there was more, because more had already started to happen in small increments, but this was really big for me. It was really very, very big. And I sort of grabbed a hold of that, and it became the ladder that I would travel upward and onward.
What inspired you to start writing 8 Habits of the Heart? And tell us about the next book that you're going to be writing.
8 Habits of the Heart, really, I worked with educators for the Department of Defense. And I traveled all over the world wherever we had American schools. And I would talk about the 8 Habits of the Heart, but I had no book. I used the book Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored. And I said, these are the people who gave me the habits of their heart. And one of the people, Dr. Dolores Saunders in Frankfurt, Germany, said, why don't you write a book called 8 Habits of the Heart? And I was challenged to do that in Frankfurt. I wrote the book, and surprising to me and to others as well, it became an amazing book that really surprised me as to what I could accomplish. I had no idea that that small book would travel literally around the world.
So tell us about the next book that you're writing. You hinted before the webinar started that it's historical fiction.
Yeah, it's I started writing it in 2004. And I had finished the manuscript. I let maybe 3 people read it. I put it away, locked it away somewhere, and I had forgotten. Almost 15 more years. I had this manuscript just there. Coming to Tulsa, Oklahoma to school, to college, I was introduced to the 1921 race massacre. I had never heard of Black Wall Street. I had never heard of this incredible community of Black Americans who, after 1865, the 13th Amendment had passed and slavery had been abolished, that the territories were open and Black people flooded the territories, and it was a town in the territories that eventually became Black Wall Street. And so I've never written historical fiction before, but on May 31st, I believe 1921, the massacre happened, and all hundreds of their businesses were destroyed. All 37 square blocks of their main business district was totally obliterated, burned to the grounds, and thousands of people were homeless in less than a 24-hour period of time. So I'm writing a book called The Last Witness, based upon a conversation I had with one of the last witnesses. I will always remember this lady. I will always remember her tears. I will always remember how real she made it sound. And I said, I want to write a book, but I wanted to capture the hearts of people the same way her conversation captured my heart. And so it's with an editor now, and it's scheduled to be finished editing it by March the 6th. Then I'll send it up to Boston to the agent.
It's certainly a historical event that most of us have never heard of, especially if you grew up white in a white elementary school. I'd never heard of it. But Black Wall Street, with, bursting with entrepreneurship, and we know that entrepreneurship is near and dear to your heart. How did you set about on the path of becoming an entrepreneur? And for those of you who maybe don't know Clifton's background, he is an entrepreneur. He's an international lecturer. He's a CEO. He's a Pulitzer Prize nominee. He's a true Renaissance man. So what were some of your early experiences in business and entrepreneurship?
I would say that I wrote a book called Who Owns the Ice House? It's about my great uncle Cleve. I
Mhm.
wrote it along with a guy named Gary Shoniger. It's literally all over the world, but it's about entrepreneurship. How my uncle never knew the word entrepreneurship because he comes from a French derivative, because
It's
he
hard to
didn't speak
spell too.
French. But the word that he used was gumption.
Mm.
He said, if you got gumption, Clifton, you can accomplish anything. When I worked with him at the Ice House, I learned that gumption was not something you could buy, but it's an internal quality that if you have it and you can massage it, you can take care of it, it can really grow and change your life. And it certainly did mine. And I became involved in a number of things that Stairmaster exercise equipment systems. I was very much involved with the early start of Stairmaster and wrote part of the programs that allowed the company to be successful because I just had that idea that there was nothing I couldn't do or accomplish. And if you set your mind to it, according to Uncle Cleve, all you needed was gumption. And of course, we call it the entrepreneurial mindset today. The wonderful work that Dr. Carol Dweck has done on mindset. I had a growth mindset. They divided into two mindsets today, the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. And I would say that Uncle Cleve definitely had the growth mindset and passed it on to his great nephew.
Now, how has your mindset influenced younger generations, children, maybe even in your own family?
Well, I know my son is certainly is an entrepreneur. And
Mhm.
that's our great joy to watch him and to watch his life and to watch him live with the reality that there's nothing he can't accomplish. There's nothing he can't do. Uh, but but now I find myself having conversation. My conversations are divided into two parts. I will forever and always talk about community and the 8 habits of the heart. But now I talk about the entrepreneurial mindset and the 5 doors of exploring, the 5 exploratory doors. Because I said people need to understand what's inside that entrepreneurial mindset. There are 5 things. There's inquisitiveness, imagination, introspection, attitudinal adjustments, and culture defined.
Mhm.
Those are the things, those are the doors that I try to open so that men and women and boys and girls will understand that, yeah, wait a minute. Inquisitiveness, I got that. Imagination, I have that. The challenge is we have to accelerate our imagination and embrace inquisitiveness as a quality to be utilized, not overlooked.
We have another question. Miriam writes, you have seen so many changes in society and the world over your lifetime. With AI technology and high rates of mental health, where do you see society heading in the future?
I think about this often because I know that I have lived the most of my life, and I wonder about the life that will be left for those who will be come on after me. I have hope for the future. I have hope for the future because even when I was a kid, it would have been a time in my life to have no hope for the future because every generation behind me had worked the fields of the Delta. That was our life. And I assumed that would be my life. But hope somehow finds a way to make an entrance into the hearts and into the minds of humanity. And in so doing, the world that had pretty much captivated my life, that world, for the most part, it didn't disappear, but the hold on me was loosened and finally the shackles were removed. And I live with that hope that even though things today, I, I think can be much better than what they currently are. And I know that something, the tragedies that we're seeing throughout our country, the things that make me hurt, when I see these things happen, I still have hope that tomorrow is yet to be lived, is our best day, because my grandpa left me with one statement. He said, tomorrow is the best day because man ain't touched it yet. And I understood exactly what he meant.
Mhm.
There is a day that's coming that is not here. But in that day, I hope that we will be able to see the best of who we are.
You are getting some thumbs up for that. That's a bit of a tongue twister. But yes, agreed. Okay, any other? Oh, here we go. Somebody says here, outstanding program. We are watching in Arizona with friends. This is a universal program for all. So even some of our Gale Board and snowbirds are tuning in tonight, and that's wonderful. So this is a universal program for all ages. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments for Mr. Taulbert? In that case, I believe we'll wrap things up. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing your time with us this evening. We are truly very honored and privileged to have Mr. Clifton Taulbert speak to us tonight, sharing his words of wisdom and his hope for the future. He really is an extraordinary heart and mind, and sir, we're just so happy that you could be here with us. And on a final note, somebody said, thank you for inspiring us. And I think we'll leave everybody with that. Mr. Taulbert, do you have a final word to say?
I would just simply like to say it was my honor and my pleasure to speak with you, because I want you to know that I was in the audience with you. Every conversation that I hold, I talk to myself. I remind me again of what is required of me. It's not just me telling you a story, but I'm listening as well, realizing that every day of my life, I have the opportunity to be the person that my great aunt dreamed for me. When I was 17, she put me on the train to St. Louis, Missouri, and she hugged me. And what she said was this: whatever you do, don't make us ashamed. I have lived my life by that mantra. I owe my life to them.
That's beautiful. Thank you again, sir. And thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.